do this every other. Oh.
Hello, everybody. Welcome to Virtual Thursday's Tire Literary Series, where we do it every other week and sometimes on Fridays. So I'd like to welcome my feature tonight, Phil Temple, and many of his friends, and Robert, some of my regulars, and Susan, and everybody. So welcome to the show, and we're the Burgundy Boys. So let me tell you a little bit about Phil. And if you're really interested in this, temples.com is where you find all of his information. But here it is. And what a cool desktop, by the way. Phil was born and raised in Bloomington, Indiana. He's lived and played in Greater Boston for over 40 years. He was I'm going to jump around a little bit. He began writing flash fiction and short stories in the 1990s for his own amusement. And since then, he's had over 220 titles appear online and in print. He's had some novels published. He's had some flash fiction published. He's had some anthologies published. He's had chapbooks published. And he started his professional career in software engineering. We're going to get into that a little bit later, the whole engineering creative process and how that might work. So with that, I'd love to turn it over to Mr. Phil Temples.
Okay, thanks, Tim. Hi, everybody. Good to see a lot of friends and new friends. My latest novel is entitled Panda in the Park. It's available on Amazon. It's a short read. I'd like to think that it's a page turner, and hopefully you'll get started and you won't put it down until you get to the end. It was fun writing it. I like world building. In fiction, you can take the world as it is and change just one or two things about it, or you can change everything about it. In my case, this world is pretty much similar to what we have today. It's set in the year 2055, roughly, in Boston. And unlike our world, though, there are tens of thousands of alien creatures who are on Earth. They're not commonplace, so that when people see them, they do kind of stare a bit, scratch their heads. I'm going to read a few sections from the book. Incidentally, the book has villains. I mean, it has everything that you'd like to see in a book. It's got villains. It's got some tender moments. It has chase scenes. It has shootouts. Of course, it has a spaceship or two. And there's even some scenes involving the U.S. military. So lots of different action going on here. I'm going to read 3 short sections, starting with the very beginning, chapter 1. The protagonist is Sean Murphy, and the alien, the main alien proponent character is called Mr. P. Sean Murphy was getting pummeled by the neighborhood punks. A scrawny 24-year-old. Sean had a mouth on him and got him into trouble all the time. He was always pissing somebody off, usually people much bigger than he. His mother told Sean that he ought to learn to keep his mouth shut. Either that or start working out at the gym and put some muscle on his bones. Jimmy O'Reilly's enforcers had Sean cornered in a dead-end alley near East 4th and J Street, demanding payment for his most recent gambling debt. Sean thought he had been given the rest of the month to make good on the payment, only to find out that he had badly misunderstood the arrangement. The Southie punks were here to collect, either in currency or a pound of flesh. One of the men, Jimmy O'Reilly's brother, Connor, was a dark character. He kicked Sean repeatedly in the kidneys while Quinn Donahue squatted on top of Sean, pummeling his face. The blood from Sean's split lip splattered onto the dirty pavement. Bits of gravel and broken glass worked their way into Sean's exposed elbows. The pain was excruciating, and he was about to pass out. Sean begged for mercy, but it only seemed to provoke more blows from the thugs. They continued to beat Sean senseless. Suddenly, Quinn got up off of Sean and ran, followed by Connor and the other 2 men. "You'd better run, assholes," Sean mumbled through a swollen mouth. He thought the The cops must have shown up. But then a dark, ominous figure walked up and stood over Sean. Just before he passed out, Sean imagined he saw a Claverian looming over him. Moments later, when he came to, Sean found himself on a park bench next to the hairy alien. "Oh, you're awake. Are those guys friends of yours?" the creature asked. "Nah, they just got no sense of humor when it comes to money." Sean squirmed on the park bench to get more comfortable, but no sitting position felt better than another. "Guess that explains why they kicked the shit out of you." After the crew had scattered, the Claverian had picked up Sean, slung him over his shoulder, and laid him on a park bench nearby. Then he walked across the street, stole some crushed ice from a convenience store, and brought it back. When Sean woke up, he was scared and sore as hell, but more or less in one piece, thanks to the intervention of this alien being from another world. The alien handed him the ice pack. Sean touched it against the side of his head. "Ouch. You're going to have one hell of a torn-up face tomorrow." Sean looked suspiciously at the creature. If the Claverian planned to rob or kill him, he would have had plenty of opportunity to do so back in the abandoned alley. "Thanks for saving my ass," Sean said. He pulled up his shirt and shifted the ice pack against the side of his abdomen. "Hey, I didn't do nothing," replied the Claverian. "I just walked up to your little party. When those guys saw me, they almost shit their britches. I got to admit, it was kind of funny." "Well, your timing was almost perfect, but a minute or two earlier would have been better. What's your call sign, Striker?" Claverians didn't go by names, but rather call signs beginning with Striker and a lettered number designation. The Claverians were a warrior race. When they arrived on Earth 5 years prior, they wasted no time enlisting with their human mercenary counterparts to participate in some of the bloodiest conflicts around the globe: Ireland, Bosherts, Nicaragua, Tanzania, Indonesia, wherever they could take up arms and kill. Killing was a striker's favorite pastime. Gambling and games of chance were a close second. Money meant little to them. Most strikers gambled away their paychecks. Claverians resembled overgrown panda bears, but they were anything but cute and cuddly. They sported large, retractable claws and mouths full of wicked sharp incisors. They ate raw meat. No one knew the exact number of Claverians who had come to Earth, but they were believed to number in the tens of thousands. Claverians were highly intelligent, bad-tempered, and deadly. So that's one section. Incidentally, this particular Claverian is a peaceful being. He was not interested in fighting. He was actually brought to Earth against his will. Here's another section. Just then, and this is where the book gets its title from. They're sitting on a park bench in a park. Just then, a little girl, perhaps 4 or 5 years old, ran up to the picnic table where Sean and P sat. She was mesmerized at the sight of the giant panda. 20 yards away, her mother, who was standing and talking to another person, looked around and spotted her daughter in the distance. She was horrified when she realized that the girl was headed straight for the alien killing machine. She stifled a scream and began to run as quickly as possible toward her daughter. She stubbed her toe and nearly tripped and fell, but was able to maintain her balance. She continued her panicked run. The little girl reached the table and immediately wrapped her arms around P's massive leg. "Panda bear," she exclaimed excitedly. The girl gently stroked his fur and cooed, "So soft." Then she looked up and smiled at P. Her expression was so cute and innocent, P thought it could melt butter or bring tears to the most hardened warrior's eyes. Sean and P looked at one another and smiled. Seconds later, the girl's mother reached the table. She was breathless and visibly shaken. "Mr. Striker, sir, please, I'm so sorry. She didn't mean anything. Please don't hurt my baby." "Relax," replied P. "She's a cute kid. I'm sure you love her very much. Here." P gently lifted the girl in the air and placed her into her mother's waiting arms. "There you go, little girl." The anxious woman burst into tears. Greatly relieved, she squeezed her daughter tightly against her chest, then she ran away. "Geez," said P. "I wasn't going to eat her or nothing." And let's see. was going to read a slightly longer passage, but let's go for the shorter one, just so we need the time. Here's a military scene, and it's based on an actual facility in Rhode Island. And this is where one of the alien ships has landed in the ocean waters, and they've determined that it's not a Claverian ship. They don't know what it is. In the basement of a nondescript brick building at the Naval Undersea Warfare Center in Middleton, Rhode Island, Commander Brack Dawson was seated behind a sophisticated console, beginning the third hour of his shift, when an underwater threat indicator suddenly sounded a warning at his desk. An object of significant size had been detected. The Navy's NUWC network of electromechanical anti-submarine warfare acoustic sensors, strategically placed up and down the eastern seaboard, was designed to relay underwater sounds of ships and submarines. Dawson turned to his acoustic whiz, Petty Officer Third Class Maurice Miracle Ear Evans, for answers. Although Evans' current tour of duty was behind a desk at the Undersea Warfare Center, he was practically a legend among the boomer crews he'd served with over the years. Evans' skill at identifying and chasing enemy subs was nothing short of miraculous. He earned the nickname Miracle Ear while serving aboard the Columbia-class ballistic submarine USS Puerto Rico. "What have you got, Mr. Miracle?" "Damned if I know, sir. It's nothing I've ever heard before. No known screw noise. Target bearing 12.5 true, range 1,000 yards from sensor UAS 62. That puts it very close to the coast of Massachusetts. I'd estimate roughly 6 miles east-northeast of Boston Light, moving at a pretty good clip." Evans put it on the loudspeaker for Dawson to hear. It was an eerie noise. As they listened, Evans ran the signal through the computer for comparisons to all known signatures, but it failed to turn up any matches in the database. Evans turned to Dawson and shrugged his shoulders. Not a damn thing." "Go active, Miracle." "Aye, sir, going active." Evans pushed a button and commanded the sensor to transmit a powerful active sonar ping aimed in the direction of the target. What was returned resembled something indicating a semi-porous object. It was on a course to Boston's South Shore. "What is this thing? Some sort of gigantic sponge?" Miracle thought to himself. Dawson and Evans looked for the target on the next sensor, 10 miles distant, but no further motion or sound was detected from it or any other sensors. "Sinker, sir." "Keep looking for it, Mr. Miracle." Dawson picked up the phone and notified the Admiral's watch at the Naval Sea Systems Command in Washington, D.C. And I think I'll stop there for now. And back to net control.
Wow, great stuff, Phil. Wonderful book. So this is your second book in the past 2 years. Your third in how many years?
Oh gosh. What's my bio saying? I forget.
But my point is, you've just been very prolific. And people always ask me, when do you have time to write? So when do you have time to write?
I get started on these sometimes, and I'll start at 8 or 9 in the evening, and the next thing I know, it's 2 o'clock in the morning. So you get in a groove and you just lose track of time.
And this is a science fiction book. Some of your other writings influenced in the science fiction genre, any of your flash fictions go there?
Other than the classic authors, Heinlein, Arthur C. Clarke, and some other names that I'm blanking out on at the moment. To be perfectly honest, I don't read nearly as much as I should. So I'd be hard pressed to, I have read some authors recently. I just don't remember their names right now.
So this book in particular takes place in Boston. Robert
In
Fleming,
South Boston, yeah.
South Boston. Robert Fleming asks, how do you place the book 20 years in the future? Did you have fun doing that? Do you go, is it way off the rails, or is it?
No, not at all. I envision a present day Boston with just a few minor changes. We're not into flying cars in the year 2055 like the Jetsons. We still drive cars. They are by and large electric cars, but there are a few gas internal combustion engine cars on the road, and they're souped up hot rods. That's what our protagonist Sean drives with Mr. P. They drive a race car, basically. What else is the same? Cars are pretty much driven manually, although they do have an auto drive mechanism. No, everything's pretty much the same, including the folks in South Boston that are somewhat prejudiced against other races. And so I try to capture that flavor of Boston.
Karen wants to know, is Mr. P also a Clavarian?
Yes, he is a Clavarian. He's the one we hear from the most. There are a few other Clavarian characters. They're mostly bad guys.
Now, since the book came out 20 years in the future, was there anything in South Boston that has closed or changed that appears in your book since the book was produced?
Since it was produced.
Or written while you were writing it?
Well, I was about to say one of my world building changes in the year 2055 is that global warming has reached the point where the rising sea levels are a direct threat to Boston and other cities up and down the eastern seaboard. And much like the Big Dig project that we had at the beginning of the 21st century, there's a project that I write about called the Big Dike. And they've actually built a complete dike surrounding the inner harbor of Boston at a cost of billions of dollars. And in it, they projected it's only going to save the city maybe for another 10 or 20 years at most.
And does everyone get their palms greased during the production of the Big Dike?
I didn't talk about any corruption. It was just one of the scenes where he's touring Boston and decides to walk over to the Seaport District and sees the big dike off in the distance. And I think there's a comment made that the Cape and Islands are just islands now. There's no Cape Cod anymore, just a series of interconnected islands.
Now, out of all the quirky characters that are in this book, which was the most fun to write and why?
Probably his sidekick, Sean. Sean is a young guy in his early 20s. He's been in trouble with the law. He has only a high school education. His mother basically kicked him out of the house. His uncle has taken him in. He works at his garage. And he's a very endearing character. In the very end of the movie, well, no, I don't want to give everything away, but let's just say he's a very endearing character who at first latches onto Mr. P for selfish reasons. In other words, he's being hunted down by these gangsters and he wants protection and figures that surrounding himself with this scary alien will protect him, but they bond. And it's an interesting duo.
When you're writing science fiction, you're creating more of a complete universe out of your own head versus when you're writing a more realistic novel. In terms of your writing process, does it come to you naturally day to day, or do you have to really get into that place in order to move the novel along?
I guess I have to get into that place. I'm not the kind of person that writes every day. Although my mentor would have me do that. It comes in spurts. It really does. But once I get in the groove, it's like I say, I lose all track of time and away I go.
So why did you choose South Boston rather than Watertown or the Cape and the Islands, like you said?
Good question. I don't know why I picked, I wanted to write about an ethnic neighborhood. You know, I could have picked the North End, or I could have picked, if I picked Watertown, I would have been picking on the Armenians, but no, I picked on South Boston and the Irish. And there are some decent Irish people in the story, and there are some not so decent Irish people of Irish descent, I mean.
All right, so this is a posted question, so I'm going to ask it. I'm not sure if it's going to go anywhere. Did the Chinese policy of lending pandas to zoos in other countries influence your book? In other words, it has nothing to do with why pandas then?
It's interesting. A couple of years back, I wrote a series of short sci-fi stories. None of them much longer than 2,000 or 3,000 words, that featured this alien race. And I wanted to portray, what would it be like if in the future there were mercenary armies run by multinational corporations fighting these little regional skirmishes in these countries. And that's when I came up with the idea of an alien creature that looked like a cuddly panda bear, but in reality was a killing machine. And that's what they lived for. Oh, and I should say the reason why they come to Earth, why it's so attractive to them, is that warfare is illegal on their planet. And so Earth was the perfect place with all of its violence and institutionalized war, that they migrated to Earth, where they were welcomed by these multinational corporations.
But the book also explores relationships and friendships in the middle of these aliens coming in to create war and violence and hate. So how is that interwoven in the book?
Yeah, you're right. There's a real dichotomy there. There are scenes that are warlike. They're being chased, by the way, by agents of this multinational corporation who find out that P has moved from New York to Boston. So they're pursuing him, and in the process, pretty much shoot up Sean's parents' house. And so they're on the run. And that's a section of the chapter, the book I didn't read here, but they spend a fair amount of time in, oh, you'll get a kick out of this. Folks locally may know of the South Shore Plaza in Braintree on 128. 20 years from now, that will become a massive homeless shelter run by the homeless people themselves. They have their own community, and that's where P and Sean hide out from the bad guys for a while.
And does the Target still exist there?
Well, I actually researched some of the stores that were in the mall, and I write about, their shuttered doors and glass windows and things.
Zvi Sessling says, do you associate with any of the characters in the book? Are you one of them, or are you one of them? Is any of them based on yourself, or is any of them, even more exciting, someone that you know, and I demand to know who?
I don't think so. There was one scene where Sean's brother, who's a police officer in the Boston Police Department, the scene that happens to him, flashback in his old elementary school that happened to me, but I can't say I identify necessarily with the character. I just injected some of my own past into him.
All right. As promised, let's talk about the engineering mind versus the creative mind. Now, I grew up in a family that my dad was an engineer, and I would say on the creativity scale from 1 to 10, he was a -2. And my mom might have been 2 or 3 on the engineering scale, but she was a creative artist. So engineers, very nuts and boltsy. What do you find that that part doesn't matter to you? You just kind of go with it, or do you find that the engineering side of your brain interferes with the creative side of your brain, or vice versa?
Well, first of all, a disclaimer, I'm left-handed. Actually, it looks like it's on the right, but I'm left-handed, and you know what that means, of course. Left-handed people are more artistic and yada, yada, supposedly. I was trained as an engineer, but I never really felt like an engineer. I never identified as one, because as soon as I could, I got into the software side of things. And writing software, to me, is more of an art than it is a science or a engineering. So, yeah, I've never really identified hardcore engineer.
Have you published any articles or books around software engineering?
I have not. No, to me, it's just a vocation, and it's not a something that I love per se.
Do any of your characters have ability to work on computers or to write software?
Not really. Mr. P is sort of a jack of all trades. He's very learned. He's read like all of these aliens. They're extremely intelligent. He devours books. He knows more about Earth history than most Earthlings, and he's able to troubleshoot complex mechanical devices, as you see in one of the chapters.
So your bio says that you started fiddling around with flash fiction in the 1990s. And I do have to say the flash fiction boom really kind of started after the year 2000. So why flash fiction and why then?
Why flash fiction? I guess I've never really been much for longer fiction. It still surprises me how people can bang out a novel with 60, 70, 80,000 words. I struggle to meet the minimum limit for what constitutes a novel, which generally above 40,000 words. So I've always been inclined to write on the short side. And some of my stuff, I guess my sweet spot is probably between 100 and 200 words.
Yeah, but then you've produced novels. So different mindset.
Yeah, I guess it was a challenge. I presented myself with a challenge to write a novel. And that was a fun one to write. My first one, it was based on a particular woman scientist, based on my wife, actually. I greatly exaggerated the character and basically made her a genius, even though my wife is a genius. This character was even more of a genius. And I turned that into a trilogy, 3 novels based on this character.
Oh, that's really interesting. And I also like the, have you ever developed a novel out of any of your flash fiction pieces?
Well, this Panda in the Park is a direct outcome of 3 short flash fiction pieces. And my other, in terms of I've no story anthologies I'm thinking of that have my flash in them, but no, I think this is the only novel that's a direct result of flash.
And because of your experience with flash, are your chapters short in comparison?
Yes, they're quite short. I'm a creature of dialogue. If you could have one criticism of me, I don't paint the scene eloquently, literally. I'm into dialogue. I paint a scene with dialogue mostly.
Okay, well, I want to thank Phil Temple for being here today and talking about Panda in the Park and some of his other writings. And if you want to find out more about Phil, just go to his website. Here is temples.com. Here is the book and the book cover, which is a wonderful cover. Who did the painting for this?
It's interesting. I was working with a local artist to try to capture a scene either with the spaceship on the beach or a park scene, since that's one of the scenes in the novel. And the publisher, Alien Buddha, he has some sort of an AI program where he'll take regular photos, run them through this AI generator. And initially he had that merry-go-round on the ground. And I was saying to him over the phone, that looks like a spaceship almost. Why don't we put it up in the air? So it resembles nothing in the way of what the real spaceship is described in my novel, but it represents something otherworldly. So yeah, I'm really really taken by this cover. This is probably the prettiest cover I've had.
Yeah, it's super cool. And thanks again for being here. Folks that are watching on the stream on Facebook, thank you for watching. And if any
Can
of
I
you
just give a quick shout out to my blurbers?
You got it.
I want to thank Doug Holder, Gloria Mindock, Michael C. Keith, Lawrence Kucinich, and Luke Salisbury for writing some really nice blurbs for the back cover.
And check out all of those authors as well. And I'm glad that was short. I mean, I was going to play you off with some song, but
By the way, I did see one hand up in the Hollywood squares. Maybe I'll take one more.
Someone that can't follow directions. Oh, Karen Klein, real quick, did you invent language phrases for your wife in the novel, or did you listen to her talking and take notes?
Hey, Karen. No language, no alien languages. In fact, my character speaks English better than most of the people in South Boston do. So it's all done in English.
So for folks that are watching on the stream, you want to come into the open mic, use the Zoom link, and we'll be able to, I'll gladly let you in. Phil, thanks again.
Thank you.